All right, so we went live on Instagram, and we have 3 dog training questions that we all believe are good. First one is what? What did we write down?
That was the baby, right? Baby intro?
Okay, how do you introduce a baby to dogs? If you guys want me to go first, I will because I'm the only one here that has a baby. All right, so introducing,
Experienced, man.
and you guys can chime in too, of course. Introducing, I think, dogs to babies. There's 2 things in my experience. The first thing is dogs are so intuitive that I've had clients that have had dogs that don't like new people, or I've had dogs that have an aggression issue or tendency. And when the mom goes through the pregnancy, they when the baby comes home, the dog doesn't like think any different. It's like, oh, I've known this baby for the last 9 months or whatever. So that's my first opinion is oftentimes when you do, I mean, you always have to be careful regardless of the dog's behavior, right? Like it doesn't matter if the dog is aggressive or friendly or whatever. They're animals and they sometimes don't know how to turn things down. Some dogs do. I think some dogs have a natural kind of like parenting vibe where they know when babies are babies and they'll slow down a little bit. But in my experience, that's the first thing is dogs who are aggressive or nervous or fearful always welcome these new babies with no problems like they've been there forever because they knew the baby was in the mom at the time. That's my first thing. Second thing is your obedience has to be really good. So why don't you guys go over so I can stop talking, why don't you guys go over some obedience that you guys would think would be huge in bringing home a new baby?
I mean, I think place in itself is probably the best command since you can target it. If the baby's, with the mom or dad on the couch, you have a dog bed next to it, place, and then assuming that the dog can settle,
Yeah.
now you have a good introduction because if the dog's like super hyper or just absolutely cracked out, it's going to be hard to get them to chill out. If they're already in place, hanging out, it's good to go.
Yeah, I'd agree. Place command is definitely like your ability, and again, it doesn't matter the spectrum of the behavior of the dog, aggressive, excited, like doesn't matter. If you tell your dog to go to their place, they should stay there until you release them. Anything else?
I mean, honestly, maybe like a strong leave it command even.
Yeah.
So if they do get too intense, or you're able to kind of even like I guess like an out command in the sense of like, hey, like, or send away place to a different spot, different couch, ottoman, say, all right, go away.
Yeah, and I think the good thing about this too is you have at least 9 months to prepare.
True.
So like any dog that you guys have it at home when you're introducing a new dog to a baby, again, it doesn't matter the behavior of the dog or if they have a history of being aggressive or a bite history or whatever. You always should have because even if like, I mean, just having a baby myself, the amount of people coming into the house, the amount of things that you have to do, like you're in and you're out, and you're really not like, I'm still like all over the place because we're just constantly like, trying to do everything that we do as well as be good parents. And so you're just like not as focused as you normally would, especially for first time people who are having, I guess, first time parents. So, so obedience in general, I think you do have enough time. Don't wait 2 weeks before the baby comes or the due date to say like, oh, we should probably train our dog. Like the moment that you guys, any parent finds out that they're expecting their first or their third or whatever, they should start training immediately.
Or at least know like what type of dog you have. So
Yeah.
if you have like, if you will, a Zora who is super hyper, having just a really good settle, whether it's going in the crate, a place command again, versus a dog that's more like laid back or cat-like that doesn't really care.
Mm-hmm.
Good obedience, nevertheless, but you just know the personality, the energy level, and that also plays a massive role. Like if you put him like a high drive mal into a household that should not have the mal,
Yeah.
and now there's a baby coming. I mean, that's tough.
Have you guys ever had a client that you've had to tell? Oh, and the other thing too, we should probably tell viewers because this is probably like the first fuller length thing that we're putting out is you guys have all been working with me for a good amount of time, and so I don't know. I guess when I ask you guys questions about your training experience, not everyone here has been here their whole career, and also I don't know what you guys do in your sessions. So, have you guys ever had to? I was just gonna say because I've had to also have the hard conversation with dog owners to say like this dog is not a good fit for a child. Have you guys? And same thing too. Like, even if it's not their newborn, if they have like nieces and nephews that come over all the time and they just adopted a dog, those are conversations that I've had to say, look, you don't have the control that you need with this dog, nor do you have just the time to handle this particular breed. You know, if you have a really like opportunistic dog, you know.
Well, I mean, I think of two immediately, and I know you've worked with them, two big German shepherds.
Yeah.
You know, they came in hot, they came in really just intense, and you know, as we kind of progressed, I mean, they both came out well, but at the end, it was a matter of like dealing with some major fear based. The dog was abused, and
Genetics.
genetics obviously play a massive role, but it was one of those things where, hey, like you have a 6-month-old daughter right now, but in 5, 6 years, she's gonna have friends over.
Right.
Like, do you want to have to, in a sense, play zookeeper for the next 10 years? You know, it comes down to we're either gonna deal with it now, or the dog is gonna be either rehomed or whatever else could occur. Luckily, you know, the owners were super dedicated, and they made the right decision, and they ended up the dog is to my knowledge presently is crushing it.
Yeah.
But again, like also dedicated owners versus ones that, you know, obviously not everyone should have those types of dogs, especially if they can't handle them or, you know, having a baby, that's a lot. Most dogs, if they're an only child, if you will, you bring home a kid, the dog gets very little attention now. So even acting out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that also is a good point too because a lot of people don't think about the child's future. Like because they're like a little baby, and even like Banks right now, he's 5 months old. He doesn't have buddies coming over yet. He's not like running around the house. He's not, you know, throwing balls. You know, like he's just like a handheld thing. And so his life. That's a good point. Zach is just
Plan
trying.
ahead.
Yeah, explaining to people that hey, this is your dog or this is your child now, but once they have friends over and also just like if your dog is 12, like chances are by the time the kid is running around, you know, they might not be around or whatever. But yeah, so good obedience. So place command, obviously the stay command that's implied with the place. I think recall is also just as good, and or it's kind of you can versatile. It's very flip floppy with like the place, but I just think in general like having good control.
I know a big one for especially a lot of board and trains that come through, whether they have kids or planning to have kids, is like overall manners, like not jumping up
Yeah.
when like they're holding their kids or changing diapers or things like that. But on the other end of that spectrum too is like having really good obedience for your dog and control of your dog, but also like teaching the kids the certain boundaries to not push the dog in certain situations that could create a problem or have them snap in a situation that could have been prevented even if the dog has really great obedience as well. We've had a board and train come in that was super flashy, send away place, recalling off of people, dogs, food, and it was more so the interactions between the dog and the kids were the biggest problem rather than the dog's obedience. It was how the situations themselves were being managed as well.
Right. So you mean just like the dog's personality and the kid and how the kids were interacting with the dogs just wasn't.
Yeah, there was like a lot of grabbing, climbing over the dog, and over time it came to like the point that every time the kids and the dogs were in the same location, it was just this association of being annoyed that the kids were around and screaming and running. So it became super, super negative and difficult to manage both the two little ones and the dog, even when the dog was doing exactly what she was supposed to do, because the other two weren't really on the same page of maybe how to interact with her.
Yeah.
And then I think there's also something to be said for like advocating both for the needs of your specific dog and the child at the same time. So like a great example is my two personal dogs. my male Doberman has a very high prey drive, and he is not great around kids. He just goes after them, not out of like aggression or anything, but he wants to chase. If a baby's crying, he hears it, he wants to go after it because he wants to catch whatever's making that noise. Like, he doesn't know the difference. So when, my family has small children and when they come around and things like that, I just remove him from the situation completely and give him what he needs separately. Whereas my younger female, she is amazing with kids and that's just kind of in her nature. So she's allowed to have those experiences. And I kind of, just advocate for what my dogs need and put them in situations that I feel that they would do well in and not put them in situations that would set them up for failure or
Yeah.
put any children at risk.
Yeah, and just knowing your dogs
Right.
and like what their disposition is naturally. Like if you have a dog at home and you feel like they would react negatively if a kid stepped on them or like pulled their tail, or like they would get grouchy. Like those are, it's just hard because those are situations that as your life changes and as your life matures, you have to make different decisions because like same thing with my two dogs that passed away this last year, Lola and Thompson. Lola was 18-ish, so she was with me all of my 20s, quarter of my 30s. So she was with me like my whole life, but I never had kids. But like as she got older, I wouldn't probably let young kids around her because she's like cranky and sore and like, And then, like Lakota, my shepherd, she's so same thing. It's a perfect example of like what you were just saying, Alyssa, is she is very friendly towards people and she never would not ever be. I would always trust her in that regard, but she's really like how Julia's Darby would be, or Zora, or even Tuca or Delta. It's like
Drivey.
really like I have to like when I want her like when we brought okay I'll go over my experience with bringing Banks home with Lakota because that was interesting. I've never seen her do the things that she did, and also I think for this question in particular, I can answer it because I worked all the way through it. And she did things that I never saw her do, and I was like really like what anyway. But I just think like with her, when I bring Banks down like on my lap and like she comes up, I monitor her physically by like holding her chain or holding her, collar, so she can't. Because I don't want her licking his face because she eats raw food and it's just gross. So I like manage her physically, but she's also the dog that like wants to kiss everybody. So I'll let her kiss like his feet or his legs or whatever. I want her to be able to see him because I don't want to fully like not have access because I think that will just build like this frustration between them, especially because in the beginning there was a lot of weird tension. So when we brought Banks home when he was a newborn, the first week or whatever it was, he was literally like, just a mush. Like he was just a baby. Like all he did was cry and sleep, cry and sleep, cry and sleep. And so Lakota was so afraid of him. Like she would go up to his bassinet, which was in our room at the time. He's not in our room anymore, but she would go up to him and she would stick her nose out and like stretch all the way to like see what it is, like a dog would if they were fearful towards other dogs, like what we do with the fake dogs. And I've never seen her do that because with people, she's really never shied away. But because it was an infant, it changed everything. Like it was completely different for her. So because of her fear getting to a point where I'm like, I've never seen her that afraid. Like she would literally like stretch out and like point and just be terrified. And any time that he would like cry or like he would like fart really loud was just like baby farts, she'd freak out. She like didn't know what to do. So judging by that behavior, because prior to that I would have said that she would be in any situation and I would never have any hesitancy. All right, never have any like filter. But because I saw that behavior, because it was a new environment. She's never like I don't have people over with 4-day-old babies, So that was something I was like, okay, I want that to warm up. So again, with her obedience, I was able to do all of that. Like I can say, go to your touch and stay. And not every dog is perfect. We learned that the other day here, but she'll do it. If I'm really on top of her and things like that. But that's the other thing too is I had to almost recondition her because I hadn't really needed her to really do anything ever. Like she got to a point where she learned her obedience and I never really use it. If I bring her out here to demo or in front of clients, she's just working for something. But like, I don't know. So that was an experience I had because even a dog that is really well trained on leash and off leash that I would trust, and me being a professional of the dog, I was like, nope, she's not going to go anywhere near him for a while until I started to see her start to act normal. So once she started wagging her tail and like lick lipping, like I was like, okay. And then I would like let her sniff him and stuff. So yeah, so obedience, take your time, know your dog. Alyssa, like great point on advocating, like making sure like if your dog is the grumpy, leave me alone, I don't really, want to do much. Like you have to understand that, you're gonna have to keep the dog separated, or even having that conversation with the owners to be like, this household or your household and this particular dog is not fit for, having a toddler, having a newborn around. And it sucks because as couples mature and like then have babies, and the dog that they had for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, they have to make that switch and that hard decision sometimes. And so it's tough. I've had those conversations with people who have adopted dogs, where they get this dog, and I'm like, this is a liability not only for just normal humans coming into your house, but because once kids start to crawl,
That's a whole new ball game.
whole new ball game, because they're like like even Banks right now, he's like slapping my face, and he like doesn't know what he's doing, and I'm like, like if when he starts to crawl, he's gonna be right at like food level. But that's the thing is like, again, advocating. Like I would never let him go in her room where she eats, and it doesn't matter how nice your dog is or how trained your dog is. You still have to not be naive to animal behavior in general.
I mean, they're still predators at the end of the day.
Still
It's
dogs.
like,
They're
yeah.
still animals. Like they're in a crate. They have a bowl that they eat raw food in. You don't want some little kid going in there. But we've all seen those videos on social media, right? Where it's like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, like kids
Oh,
are
yeah.
like banging on the dog, and they're in the dog, like you can just tell.
Like the posture, you're just like, oh my god.
Well, I think that's one thing too is people don't outweigh the pros and cons, and I think a lot of things are social media driven nowadays, where it's like we're gonna put our 5-day-old baby in our dog's bed to take a cute picture, and it's going to build a lot of tension. So I think people are very naive to that stuff. But I also think, just to add to like everything people have been saying, just desensitize the dog as soon as you know you're having a baby. Like get a fake baby, hold it, cradle it around, put your phone on YouTube, play baby sounds. Like just try to desensitize the dog to those sounds, because it's weird, and you can't replicate a real baby coming into your house. But if you can desensitize your dog to some of those things, it's going to make their life less stressful, less tension, frustration, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know for us, like we had everything in advance. We had the stroller, the bassinet, the crib. We have all that stuff in advance. So it's a great point, Kyle. Like get a fake baby, talk to it, treat it like a baby. And same thing we tell people, our clients, whether they listen or not, with our fake dogs, like don't let them go up to the fake dog, because once they do, the magic is gone.
Yeah.
So like don't let the dog see the fake baby or know that it's fake, because then you kind of lose that magic.
You just got to go buy another one now.
Yeah. So like, go as far as like wrapping it up and
Yeah.
talking to it and carrying it around the house and passing it off to family members and literally replicate.
Yeah, I tell people do that, work the dog's obedience for 10, 15 minutes, make those sessions. Like work the obedience while that's happening. It's not going to replicate a real baby screaming as loud as they can, but it's going to help.
Yeah, that's a great point. So those are all great things that people can start off with. But I think at the end of the day, like knowing your dog, and I think a lot of people out there that have just a neutral dog that loves everybody and they've never had any problems. I think obedience is huge. Advocating for your dog, because they're not going to be used to this thing crawling around it. And who knows? Like it's the same thing. Like anybody out there that has nieces and nephews too. Like I have 2 nieces, and the interesting thing about having nieces or nephews, if you have them, is they're not yours, obviously. So at one time they come over your house and they're this big, and then the next time you may see them, they may be this big. And so those are other things too, that if you have small kids over, even at your neighbors or your friends, like this is a good conversation of all the things that you should be doing. That. And the other thing too, guys, is like if your dog isn't good with kids or you don't know how it's going to go, put him in a crate.
Yeah.
Like why chance it?
Play safe.
Flipping that coin up in the air is not worth not only your dog getting into trouble, but obviously a child getting hurt.
Right, I agree. Like Delta, my dog, his obedience is wonderful, and he could be coexistent with children in the room or the house or whatever it may be. But again, why take that risk that maybe he won't listen, or maybe the kid will go up to him when they're not supposed to, or things like that? Why take that chance if you can avoid it completely?
Yeah. And I think it's the same conversation like we have all the time with our clients where, we have a conversation about the dog park. We have a conversation about like our dogs meeting dogs randomly on the walks or randomly like out for a stroll in your neighborhood or downtown or whatever. And it's like the ROI or the return on investment for that meet and greet is close to, it's like you're flipping a coin. It's like if it goes good, they're going to wag their tail and sniff a new dog that you'll probably never see again.
Yep.
That's what your dog's getting out of it. And then you might have like a conversation with a stranger that you will likely, again, never see again. Oh, it's your dog, Golden Doodle. How old? 6 months. All right, cool, bye. But if it goes wrong, and it is usually like a 50-50 split, if it goes wrong, you're talking fearful dog maybe for a long time because of the incident. You're talking vet bills. You're talking lawsuits. You're talking stitches. You're talking I mean, it's dark, but like as trainers, this is the shit that we see.
Realistic. I had to deal with it just like a month ago, walking my dog down the road, and it even probably was, in a sense, my fault of knowing like, okay, I've walked past this house before, and I got charged, but at the same time, since then the woman had put up a fence, so I was like, all right, you know what could possibly go wrong? Famous last words. And I'm walking past the house, and I'm like, oh, the dog's out. I'm like, oh, why is it in front of the fence? And sure as shit, Zora just noticed it. That dog charged her. I got in the middle. Thankfully, nothing had happened. But same thing. Call your dog. The woman's like, my dog can't come. I'm like, what? What are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like, why is it off leash? Why are we now, having this conversation that could have gone substantially worse if my dog's obedience and, in a sense, me being able to handle it? I mean, that could have been bad.
Yeah, and a lot of times it is because people like they don't know what to do. They freeze.
100%.
But that's I don't know. So it's the same thing. Like we have these flip of a coin all the time. Or like people are like the clients that we work with. Just I feel like it's one of those like same thing on the back of my sweatshirt right now. Like that's why we made this merch is because everyone thinks that their dogs have to like go out and be social.
Yeah, I mean, a big conversation I have with people is don't let society dictate what you do with your dog. I think social media and society as a whole really impact decision making people make with their dogs and what they allow them to do versus not allow them to do. I mean, we're on social media, and that's why people are here listening to this, but you see 30 different people on TikTok posting 30 different things, and you don't know what to choose, so usually the first one you hear is the one you're going to go with until you get slammed for going with that person, and it's just people get a lot of really good information, but there's a lot of really bad information, and I think it causes a lot of inconsistency with training their dogs too. But I think from a societal standpoint, don't let society dictate what you do with your dog. At the end of the day, it's your dog. Sounds weird, but it's your property. Like, just because people want to say hi to it doesn't mean they have to. Just to say no, you don't have to give a reason. Just no, and we're moving on.
Well, those are all good points. And then the other conversation that we could probably have in the future when we have a little bit more time is just picking the right dog trainer for you, because like Kyle said, is like, being somebody, a creator in the space amongst thousands of other creators. I think the problem that social media creates is like confidence. Like if I come out and say something like, this is how you do this, I'm just saying like, this is how I do this. And I think when it comes across, that's where like this like hostile stuff comes in. Like, no, that's not how you do it. It's like, no, and so like, that's the thing is like when I'm working with clients or I'm even talking to you guys about conversations, it's not like a definite, like this is the only way to do things. And I think that the dog owners out there that are listening to this and even watching this, that's where they run into problems is they go online and they don't understand that it's like picking a restaurant or even like niching down even more than that. It's like picking, like we went out to like fine Chinese restaurant last night. And it's even more than like niching down to just dog training as a whole. It's like there's certain people who have these results. And, if you're watching somebody that is just constantly putting out information about what they feel and as well as like how they train their dogs in their home, like that's only going to be applicable likely to those environments. Like it's that person's dogs in their home and that's how they're training. And for me, I try to like, we filmed earlier and I was explaining that the dog that you rescued from the kill shelter that was shutting down and insecure and not shutting down in a terrible way, but shutting down because he was nervous and not really working for food. I'm like, I'm going to film, like, it doesn't make me look good by filming this session because the dog is so out of whack. But we work through the entire afternoon working with the dog because that's the type of footage that people actually need to see. Like, they need to know, like, okay, when my dog doesn't want this treat, what do I do? And that's what I tried to put out earlier. And so anyway, so we can have that conversation at a different time, but it's just a good point that just in general, you know, and that's the beauty of like having podcasts and people listening and watching podcasts is it's long form content on like we all collectively have you know, a good amount of experience with working with different variations of, you know, making everyone kind of works with different things. Like some of you guys work with board and train, some of you guys work in daycare, some of you guys work in training. So there's a lot of conversations, but at the end of the day, like it's a good point. Just making sure that you pick your person properly and understand that it's not a tribalistic approach. It's not like I believe in this person, you know, it's like just make sure that it works. Like it's you got to read through certain things, but yeah.
I mean, I think it's like fad diets too. It's like one doesn't work, they switch because they're not consistent. They switch to the next, it still doesn't work, and there's like, all right, I can't train my dog. But it's like you also can't be switching that quick, but you can't be switching mindsets on how you're going to train every day because you're not going to see any results. It's going to be frustrating, but you also can't be afraid to try different things because a lot of people start with what it balanced or purely positive or whatever it is, and they only do one way, or even just straight up just correcting a dog in every position, which is very old school training, which luckily it's dying out and we're not seeing it as much anymore. But it's like, do not be afraid to try new methods, even if you do different methods for different situations. It's not one size fits all.
Well, I think too, like though, it's also based on the dog.
Yeah.
You know, like there's certain dogs that are going to need more of this, and others need more of that. Whether it's okay, this dog is super stressed, so food's not going to work, so body pressure starts to take over, versus a dog who's totally is in love with food. You can make them do whatever you want, and they're going to say hell yeah because I'm getting paid for it. You know, it's like you just have to be able to read the room, and I think in a lot of ways people are very quick to like come on, let's go. It's like, well, the dog is the one that we're teaching. I mean, like if they're too stressed out, the two work. We have to, you know, work through it. You know, even like Kyle, you know, had a session where he's doing multiple, just a lot of leash pressure because the dog just didn't want to move. It's like, well, you can't force that. You have to work at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that dog we talked about the other day just shut down, wouldn't take food. Lady just for 4 or 5 years, whatever it was, just, all right, we're going home type of thing. It's like you have to help that dog through that situation with pressure, fair pressure, but pressure nonetheless, because you can't bribe the dog with hot dogs because they shut down from stress because they're off the property line. So.
Yeah, and especially if you're doing it for like more than 6 months, let alone a year or 5.
Yeah.
What's the definition of insanity, Julia?
How would you like me to answer that?
With the definition of insanity. Yeah.
Boom, roasted your ass.
I don't think you can say that on the podcast.
Yeah, you can swear.
Oh.
You don't know the definition of insanity?
Doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result.
Well, Zach knows. All right, what's the next question on the board, Abby?
Ooh.
What is it?
How old are we talking?
Oh, okay.
Oh man,
Are we
Yeah, so
talking
it's-
like
Kyle's ready.
what age are we
Well,
talking?
do
okay,
this
so
shit.
so let's go down the line.
All right.
Start with you, and we won't have to
Go
go into
first.
details. I just have a question for everybody.
Okay.
What would this is actually a good question, and that's why I love doing this podcast. Is this like long form conversations with professionals that are eager to learn more about things. So, what would you consider a puppy? Like what ages? And I don't need a ton of context. I just need like if somebody was like, "Oh, my puppy is this," and you'd be like, "That's not really."
Yeah, I mean, like, whenever, obviously, when the dog is first born, up until 11 months, a year, maybe a little over a year. I think it's hard because I think puppy is also somewhat of a mental state for the dog.
Yeah, they
Like some dogs have puppy stages that last way longer because they don't mentally develop as fast. But like, yeah, I'd probably say up until a year-ish.
So there's no real set for you,
I
okay,
don't-
Julia.
There are some dogs that are just going to be puppies forever.
Okay.
At heart.
Yeah.
At Darby.
At Darby.
Yeah.
At Darbus.
Yeah.
Does he have an Instagram?
It's at I'm going with Owen.
And Darby. Oh, it's weird.
What?
I say honestly, I always describe like up to 6 months as like true puppyhood, and then they kind of go into like a tween category where they're still like, you know, obviously very much immature, mentally developing, but I think there's a little bit more that you can work with because I think like puppies truly are like they forget their name. And I always say like you got to be more fun than dirt, and I think For most dogs, like it's probably pretty accurate. But I think for dogs, especially under 6 months, that is like the core. Like even Zora for the first 2 months that that I had her, I distinctly remember saying like, God damn, she does not like me. But in reality, I was coming down really strict and hard on her, knowing that.
You?
Oh, yeah, I know, right?
Not Zach
Me?
Burt.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Not ZB. Oh,
Have
by
you
the
met
way-
her?
By the way, so we had our staff dinner last night at the nice Chinese place.
Promise, don't.
I'm not gonna bring up.
How many margaritas, Tom?
No, I'm gonna just talk about. I texted Adam a picture, our friend Adam, and
No bad lawns.
I texted a picture, and so it's like it's all of us sitting at like the table,
Yeah.
and
When did you
there's-
take that?
there's just Zach at the end of the table, and he goes, look at BB, and like didn't say anything. Like there was no
Burt.
no context, like just BB, and I've never heard anybody refer to you as BB. So I'm like BB.
It's a new development.
Yeah, so then he just goes Big Bert, head of the table. Anyway,
Full send, baby.
so you said 6 months is definitely puppyhood.
Yeah, I would say for sure. I mean,
6 to a year is like teen puppy.
yeah,
I think that's a good. It's like
the tweens, teenagers.
it's blossoming
all
into
the
teenage
Oh
years.
yeah, good times.
Abby, I'm sending you this photo so you can put it in the YouTube, so you can show people Big B at the end of the table. Jason,
That's a new one.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the 6 to 8 months puppyhood, and then you're kind of getting into like adolescent, teenage years. But definitely the breed of dog will play a role in that. XL breeds mature much different than toy breeds, so that's also a factor with their mental maturity and physical size maturity, which also plays a role in training if you have a 100-pound 8-month-old dog.
yeah,
But I would say by the 1 year mark, you're starting to get more to the serious phase or adulthood.
yeah,
Yeah, I kind of agree with what Zach and Kaysen both said, that it really just kind of depends on the dog, and after you get past that like first core 6 months of the dog's life, then you, like Zach said, you have more to work with. So they're just starting to kind of catch up to what you're doing, and then there's something to be said for like being a little too harsh or not enough structure, and just paying attention again to the dog in front of you and what they need as they develop.
yeah.
But I would say again, like once you hit kind of that year to year and a half where they start to mature all the way around, that's where I would put the cutoff.
Yeah. Okay, let's go over the tips.
Okay.
All right, so why don't we collectively come up with 3 so we don't
Well, can
all
we-
say the same stuff?
I have a really good one. My favorite
Okay.
thing to do with young puppies is boundaries. So like coming in and out of the crate, thresholds, doorways, things like that.
That's what we just did
Doesn't
with.
have to be verbal, just starting those manners early.
That's what we just did with your new foster,
Little Duke.
little Duke.
Little
Actually, I kept when we were filming, I kept like wanting to call him Hazard because I was
Yeah, he is.
I was joking. Well, I was joking earlier from like Duke's a Hazard. So when you said Duke, I'm like I'm just gonna call him Hazard.
It
But
fits.
no, he did good. He did good on that. Okay,
I
so
mean, he's adoptable, so he could have any name.
but yeah, that's true. So boundaries, thresholds, not
Crate.
even nonverbal. Like hey, you
Right.
can't.
Crate training.
Okay.
Say it louder.
What kind of
Crate
crate? What kind of
training.
crate do you recommend? Billy?
Impact, baby.
Yeah, impact.
Impact all day long.
Good
Oh my
answer.
best.
Okay.
Impact
All
all
right,
day
if
long.
that's
one
all
in
you
the
need
whip.
to say. Okay.
Impact, but yeah, no, crate training without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, like I distinctly remember bringing Zora home and saying, "Let's see how bad she is," in the crate. But at the same time, it was one of those things where I put her in.
Yeah.
She screamed for like 5 minutes. I just walked out of my room, and then I waited till she was quiet. Walked back in, didn't engage, just walked in my appearance. And then she, in a sense, quieted down. I left again and just played the game until a couple days later, she was so much more calm and settled in her crate. But at the same time, like I think like when you take home a puppy, you have, at least in my opinion, like the first year of the dog's life is going to set up the next 12. So if you don't do crate training, boundary, structure, being fair, of course, but you're going to have, or there's a chance you're going to have a really hard time. Especially, in a sense, like dogs come in here, with behavioral issues anywhere from, at this point, like a year and a half to 2-3 years old. And big question, is your dog crate trained? And they're like, no. It's like, well, that will play a role.
Or they were for 4 weeks.
Yep, and then they stopped. And it's like, well, that's not helping because your dog is super anxious, super nervous. I mean, it's the idea of like if you were growing up and you didn't have your own space, bedroom, closet, who knows, like you're not going to be able to, calm down and cope.
Harry Potter, dude?
Yeah, man, like the Darby closet,
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Darby's closet.
Closet.
Well, I think too that a lot of people undervalue really proper socialization. Like for me, when I have I don't really touch puppies anymore unless it's like working line puppies, Mal, stuff like that.
Kyle, what is socialization?
Yeah, I was gonna get into that. Don't worry.
All right, well, I'm just
Got
saying.
you, man.
All right.
So, and when I say socialization, I think a lot of people, and I have to have this conversation with clients, a lot of people think, okay, meet every single dog we see, meet every single person we see. It's, arguably more important is like environmental socialization and having them very environmentally sound. Like once they're vaccinated, Home Depot, Lowe's, pet-friendly places, get them everywhere you can and build really positive associations with it. A lot of people want their puppies having a perfect downstay by the time they're 5 months old. That's not the most important thing. The obedience will come with time. I'm more about food luring, confidence building, exposure, letting them meet people and dogs, but specific people and dogs, and being picky about how you let them get introduced to those people and dogs. But I think a lot of people really miss out on the exposure at a young age and don't realize how vital it is to have a well-rounded dog when they're older. And obviously, if we talk exposure, genetics always come down the line at some point, so that's something that pops up, and sometimes you just can't do anything about it. And if it's genetics, unfortunately, there's not a lot you can do to change genetics. But I think management and stuff like that in the house, having the dog leashed, supervised all the time. But I think exposure is the biggest thing I tell my clients to do before they start coming in. It's like, I'm not going to see you for like a month to 2 months. Get your dog out, feed them, do hand feeding with every single puppy. That's super important to help build the relationship, but just exposure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like right now with Banks, like there's a ton of synergy between raising puppies and raising a child. It's like it's very similar, and like the desensitization, like with Banks, he's been to almost every state in the country, and he's been to already like toured the UK and back before he's like 4.5 months old.
More traveled than I.
Yeah, so many people. So everyone's like. So my point is this. That's just. I'm just saying, like, the other day we were at Taylor's aunt's in Long Island, and something along the lines of like, "Oh, is the baby sleeping? Do you want us to like?" I'm like, "You can do anything you want. Like, you can talk as loud as you want. You can laugh as loud as you want. You can turn the music up. You can turn the TV on. Oh, they didn't want to turn the hockey game on because the baby was sleeping in the other room, and I'm like, this baby just got off a worldwide tour, and he has heard and seen so much already. So like, it's the same thing as like that desensitization, right? Like, there's same thing with dogs. Like if they've never seen a garbage truck or a vacuum or a snow shovel, by the time they're like 8 months, it's going to spook them out, or they're just going to harass you about it. And so, Julie, did you have something to say about like your puppy tips? So we have boundaries, we have crate training, we have socialization, which from what I heard from Kyle, is neutrality in realistic environments.
Confidence building, neutrality. It's a big pie chart. It's not just meeting dogs and people.
Can we do you have the pie chart?
I don't have a visual. I
Can you
could
draw
probably.
it?
Yeah, my handwriting's pretty bad though, so
It
you
is-
might want someone else to do it.
It is very bad.
Oh, the pie chart will go here.
we need.
Thanks, Abby.
We do
We're
need.
just giving Abby so much work to do.
We do
Sorry,
need like
Abby.
a whiteboard in here so we can have Kyle draw.
I don't.
You might not
We
know
do
what the
have-
picture is.
Oh.
We-
Oh yeah.
We
That's
do
so
have
rude.
a whiteboard in here, but he does also have chicken scratch, so
Try my hardest, man.
it can be challenging
I'll
to
write it
decipher
then.
sometimes. Don't ask me to read what he does in any of his board and train sessions because I won't be able to tell you.
We see the initials and we knew something was done.
There was some
Kyle was
quality
here.
work there,
I
but
don't
we don't
even-
know what it was.
I don't even know if I can decipher the initials though. I just see the chicken scratch and I go, all right, that checks out. That was Kyle.
Yeah.
I had delayed learning when I was younger.
Wait, was there?
Delayed learning?
Wait,
I
wait,
went
wait,
to a
wait.
speech therapist when I was younger. Don't make fun of me, dude.
What does that
What
have
does
to
that have to do with
your
writing?
Probably affected that too.
It might be more of a cognitive thing. We don't know.
Never been an artsy guy.
With writing, you don't have
Yeah,
to be
writing,
artsy to
drawing.
write.
I think they go hand in hand. If you're good at I think if you're good at drawing, you have a much better chance at if you have a good at writing, much better chance at being good at drawing.
That
That's
is so
false.
Or
I
at
can
least
tell you,
you could transfer it quicker if you applied yourself.
I can tell you from personal experience that I am a horrible artist.
Maybe.
How often have you tried to draw? Have you been consistent like dog training about it? Probably not. So try for a couple weeks, and I guarantee you'll be pretty good.
Okay, I'll bring you a picture every single day.
That's what I want.
Okay, and it's just not going to be
same
good.
subject every single day, and you
Okay.
just see the progress
What do you
over
want
the
it to
course of
be?
a month.
A house, a tree, and a person.
No.
That's like what you draw in kindergarten.
Yeah.
It's
well,
it's what you draw for like art
therapy.
therapy.
Wait, did you hear me? Kindergarten.
kindergarten.
Kindergarten,
Like
Kindergarten.
it's a garden. Kindergarten.
kindergarten,
Elementary.
elementary. No,
Anyway, all right.
wrong.
So did you have any tips for the people out there about?
Probably not.
Okay. Alyssa, do you have any that you want to add, Kaysen? I know you said boundaries.
I
Alyssa,
think-
but
I think, well, Kyle already kind of mentioned it, but I would like to harp on the importance of hand feeding
Yes.
dogs.
okay. So hand feeding. So people who don't know what that is, they just got a puppy, they just got a dog that they rescued. When you say hand feeding, can you go over and can you pull the mic away just a little bit?
Sorry.
No, you're fine. It's not fair to you because you don't have headphones because you don't know the volume.
I know.
That's perfect. That's perfect. So when you say hand feeding, talk about that.
Feeding your dogs via your hand.
Did you just roast my ass or what? Boom, roasted. So okay, that's it. Kyle, do you want to talk about Casey?
Yeah.
Somebody want to talk about hand
I mean,
feeding?
so when do you want to go? You can go. Go
No,
ahead.
it's fine.
Oh, pop off.
No, go.
I think
Pop off, queen.
I'll just add like a couple things to it. So when you're hand feeding, I mean essentially you're just doing training sessions, but everything is coming from your hand. So it can start to build a really good relationship with your dog because they see where the value of the food is coming from. A couple tips for it if anyone out there wants some, they're pretty good. I always tell people don't feel the need to just break it up into the traditional 2-3 meals, whatever you feed your puppy. I usually tell people put their whatever amount of food they're getting in a little container or in your training pouch, do a bunch of sessions, short sessions throughout the day, especially with puppies, cut sessions down because they do not have the mental stamina or capacity to do long sessions. So instead of just doing 3 sessions, you can bang out like 5, 6 smaller sessions, which is going to be a lot more useful for the dog and a lot more productive. But yeah.
What are the benefits of plain viewer here?
Yes.
What are the benefits of hand feeding your dog? So like, okay, my puppy in the morning gets a cup and a cup at night. If I put a cup of food in my treat pouch and I go out and train, like what are like other than the obvious of starting new behaviors, but what are the benefits of doing that? Like why would you do that versus why would you do hand feeding versus feed your dog in the morning, get him out and then do treats? Like is there any else you want to add to that?
Do you want to go?
It's not a test, guys.
Oh, I know. I'm just trying to get her involved.
Oh, okay.
I'm fine.
I feel like I cut you off, so you
you're
can
good.
answer.
No, you're good.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, what's so funny over there, Zachbert? I mean, I think
BB.
like I mentioned earlier, starting to build that relationship with the dog, it is a much different picture. Your dog taking food directly from your hand than from a free bowl.
Working for
making
it.
them work. Yeah, making them work for it. You can start doing luring, obedience stuff. So it's really good for that. I mean, also you're not adding a bunch of extra treats. Obese dogs is a really big problem nowadays. So you're not adding a bunch of extra calories to the dog. Biggest is just relationship though, and it's 2 birds with 1 stone. You're feeding them, and what's up?
Go ahead, no,
Oh,
continue.
you're feeding them, and you're also getting sessions involved. You're building confidence with the dog. You're building the relationship with the dog. All that type of stuff.
Yeah, it's good.
And I think, like, at least for the hand feeding, I mean, like, I deal with, I'm sure Kyle does too, like a decent amount of like mild resource guarding, especially when it comes towards food. Yep. And especially, bringing like a rescue home or even a new puppy, like if you're starting off by saying, hey, I'm controlling all the resource, food, water, space, you're not going to run into issues down the line of the dog saying, oh, but this is mine. It's like, says who? Because we've done this since you've been brought home, that I give you the food, you look to me, I tell you what to do, and everyone's happy. You're thriving, doing your thing. And I think like in a sense though, it's like certain dogs are never going to have those issues, but at the same time, the safeguards are important. I mean, if you don't ever do any of this, and now you have a absolute basket case of a dog who's resource guarding space, food, toys, the bed, the couch. Oh yeah, heck, like it all stems from like, well, why does the dog think that way? Like, so when they're hovering over their food bowl and you're just, oh, it's okay, it's okay. It's like, no, it's not. Because, if you walk too close, are you going to get a puncture in your leg? Are you going to, get this, get that? And behavior, it snowballs so quickly, So when you have a little puppy who knows, or even like actually, Zora didn't see a food bowl until she was almost 6, 7 months. It was all hand feeding. Because again, she was also high drive, German Shepherd. So free training sessions, hell yeah. Tired puppy, absolutely. But again, like hand feeding, avoid behavioral issues.
Yeah, I think to add to that too, one thing we really try to instill in clients, and I know all of us that have dogs, like what are the most valuable things in their lives, and it's us. It's not the food, it's not the tug, it's us. They're working for us. That's a gateway to pay them for the things that they're doing that we want. So it sounds self-centered, but you want to be the most important things in your dog's life, and if you are giving them, it's arguably one of the top 3 most important resources they need besides water and air to live and shelter and all that stuff, you are going to skyrocket on their list. So it's going to help neutrality. I mean, it can help curb dog reactivity, people reactivity before it starts because they're looking at you more than anything else in the environment. So that stuff's really important, the engagement, conditioning that when they're really young. Because I also talk, I'll stop in a second, one little more tangent. I talk a lot to people about when we start engagement work, there is a huge difference between physical engagement and mental engagement. So like when they're younger, you're doing a lot of physical engagement where you're conditioning the dog to look at you. Over time, when you build the relationships, that's where the mental engagement comes in. Because dogs can be engaged with you but not caring about what you say. It's the same thing when you're talking to people. So that physical engagement you really start to condition. With time, that's where the mental engagement starts to come in, where they're looking at you, but they're also saying, okay, what do you need from me?
Yeah, that's one thing. I get a lot of questions about Lakota's engagement. Like everyone's like, how did you get her to look at you so much? And part of it is her breed, but the other part is when she was a puppy, that's all I did was she, kind of going back to what everyone was saying and collecting these, is she had to go through me to get anything. So if she wanted a ball or if she wanted food or if she wanted to go out or if she wanted anything that she wanted, she had to look directly at my eyes and then I released her to it. So I taught her, like with food, I would teach her the focus command. So I would take the food and teach her focus over time. And then anytime, so that's what I did in the beginning as a hand fedder, like with I had a Home Depot apron pouch at the time. And I would just feed her like that. And I'd say she probably won't do it now, but I can't remember what I said, like look or focus or something, or eyes or something. And she'd look at me and I'd pay her. And so that's why like now when I get a ball out or I get a tug out, she's like staring at my eyes because she knows when she was a puppy. I got her at 6 weeks. And I know when she was a puppy, I worked on all that. So that's something that like people ask me all the time, how is Lakota so engaged? And again, part of it is her working lines, but the other part is when she was a puppy, I imprinted that no matter what she wants, she has to go through me to get it. So
underrated unless you're in it.
So hand feeding, boundaries, crate training. Kason, you have anything?
Yeah, not necessarily the foundational stuff that they were talking about, but I think it comes very closely thereafter with more so an actual command and action that I feel like we can all say is a life-saving command is recall. I think there's been so many instances where we've heard the horror stories of my dog got off leash, other people's dogs getting off leash, and that recall is heavily built on engagement. They have to want to come back to you. They have to have that relationship with you to listen. So a lot of that comes from all of the things that we were just talking about. But I think a life-saving command that every dog should know is a solid recall.
Yeah.
And I would actually even go a step further and outside the recall. It's like,
He's one upping you.
no, I mean, I'm just building off of it,
It's Zach.
Kason's here and Zach's like,
Big Bert.
just kidding.
out command.
Yeah.
Having
love
a
that
strong
one.
out, drop it, whatever you want to use, because that one time where they steal something, they take it. As an example, you get a lab. Labs are known to inhale everything, but more importantly, they steal stuff. They're retrievers. Like, that's what they do. And so, like, having that ability to have a good out command, whether, at a young age when you're not really having any issues, whether you're doing trading or just two-toying, however you want to do it, you're avoiding a possessive issue. Certain breeds are going to be more possessive, of course, but like a good out command, and not where it's like, oh, I had to go grab a treat. It's like, no, I want them to spit out whatever is in their mouth. If Zora got some chicken bones, Los, and she would spit them out. But again, at the same time, I play fetch with her, and she looks at me like I'm an idiot when I tell her to los. But that's another story.
Well, I think one thing too, and this more applies to like people that have working dogs that really have high octane dogs. If you teach the out properly, it will not kill drive. So do not be afraid to teach the out early. If you teach it right, it's not going to kill drive.
And like Zach said, it's applicable in everyday life. Like recall and out are probably two commands that I use with both of my dogs every single day of their lives, whether it's like a dangerous situation or just part of our daily routine and whatever we're doing, whether it's fetch or if they find a piece of kibble on the floor that I don't know exactly what it might be yet or something like that. If I can just either recall them from it or ask them to leave it is another one that kind of ties in with out, or if they already grabbed something they shouldn't be having, asking them to out. It's like 3 things that you can just use in succession with one another to keep everyone safe.
Out, crate. But not only just crate, but impulse control and boundaries,
Well, I mean, I think
neutrality.
like a lot of the stuff we're talking about though, it's like it's not yes, you can say it's obedience, but it's not your sit down stays. And I think those are important. Don't get me wrong, but when you're bringing in a puppy, who again, the next 12 to 15 years, it's an investment. You want to have a good foundation. And I think, yes, foundational obedience can come, but at the same time, it's like you only get one chance to set these rules in stone. I can teach a dog who's 10 years old how to sit. Can I teach a dog who's 10 years old, how or not, not to chase cars, like their prey drive's out of control, their impulse control is horrid, but you can work on that, but that's management versus doing it when they're 12 weeks old. You have so much more flexibility since they're yay big versus yay big.
Yeah, so it's just overall relationship.
Yeah.
That's why, like, when I was working with Duke earlier, we talked about, when we were filming, we talked a lot about, like, my No Bad Dog Kickstarter course, which you can purchase in the link below. No, but that's like when I started off doing that course with Elena's dog, Theo, I was like, all right, I'm going to just do, like, because we get this question a lot, like, puppy stuff. Like, what would I do with a puppy? And Theo was like classical puppy, where like Duke was not classical. So it was like a dog that was born and raised around families and like litter mates and like traditional bring up, like with people, right? Like you have a good start, right? You have an advantage, and then there's other people who don't. And like Duke's a perfect example, which is why I'm happy that we were able to film that session, because he gave me a ton of pushback. And going back to what you're saying about different training, like if you watch the training video or you watched somebody talk about here's how to train a dog that is perfect, like that probably won't make any mistakes and makes your job really easy. But what about that dog that genetically was born in the streets and had to eat garbage for, to survive, or didn't have mom and dad or whatever? So anyway, so the Kickstarter course is something too to reflect on, because when we did that with Theo, I was like, I'm going to create this puppy course. And then I realized, I was looking at Abby, I'm like, wait a minute, this is not a puppy course. This is everything that people see in my dog training videos of a reactive, fearful, aggressive dog is lacking. Everything that I taught Theo in that course was literally all the basics that when people come in with that, so they wait for the problem to happen. And then when they come in here, they're like, my dog is externally exhibiting these behaviors. I want this off. But the reason is because of those things that we're all talking about. So yeah, it's all about relationship and just making sure that the dog has those boundaries and understands, like, it's not all love and, the bark boxes, and like it's about boundaries, and it's about balance. And I think that that's where people make a lot of mistake. A lot of dog owners assume, like we were talking about earlier or yesterday, is like what we feel like dogs would be happy with, of like love and affection and attention and cuddles and kisses. Like imagine if we tried to do that with Duke, it would be most dogs it would be a nightmare with. But that's one thing that I think, as far as us go, as we work with clients and even in daycare, where we're like, no, like your dog does not, like people just assume in order to train a dog, you just would give them the pleasantries in life of a comfy bed and good treats and love and cuddles and an Instagram account. And it's like, everything's good. But once they like cross that boundary, no offense, Julia.
Targeted.
For a mom.
Targeted.
No, you're an influencer, proper. So anyway, anything else you guys want to add to, like, obviously it's way past 3 tips at this point.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, well,
It's just how it goes. That's how podcasts go. That's how this podcast goes, baby.
Tangents.
Yeah. Well, going off of what you were saying, speaking of daycare, like I see many, many daycare clients who, if their dog gets in like a scuffle or, snaps at another dog, corrects them, gets hurt, something like that, the minute that they realize that their dog is an animal and they're capable of these things, it's like the glass shatters and their whole world falls apart. Because, like you said, if they just give love and coddling and whatever and treat their dog like a human baby, and, in their head, they just kind of give their dog those human qualities. When they realize that their dog is still capable of being a dog, it just, everything kind of comes falling down for them and having to kind of walk them through that. Or, when new clients come in, making sure that I try to have them understand as much as I can that it is a risk reward situation with daycare, and it's not for every dog, and your dog could get hurt, and your dog is an animal and is going to act like an animal. Just making sure they're aware of that before, enrolling in daycare and things like that, or any daycare, dog park, anytime there are dogs in a group together, injury is always a possibility, no matter how well the dogs like each other. So making sure they're aware of that, and then, if something does happen, if they're prepared with the information that could happen, the blow is a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, it's something that we see all the time, too, is if daycare didn't work out for their dog, they feel...
Oh, like,
the
oh
end
my
of the
God,
world.
end of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, they fall apart.
I would never put my dog in daycare.
Nope.
He
Zora's way too much.
gets too overstimulated. He's
Yeah, like
great with
Nova
dogs,
had a good
people, but
4 months of being able to socialize before she was just like, no, this isn't for me, and she started getting a little uncomfortable. So then, boop, we stopped. Done.
Oh, actually, I got one more for the, or just, add it to another, not really
Big
a
Bert,
command,
go
but
ahead.
call it just a note of, you want to don't treat it, so it should be a privilege and not a God-given right. So like if you're going to allow your dog on furniture, on the bed, you know what? Awesome. You know what? They are part of your household. They are a family member. They deserve to, at times get those privileges, not God-given rights, because, like there's dogs that, they resource guard the couch, but that's when they've been there since the first night. So yes, that value has now skyrocketed.
I'm calling Nova out here.
Oh no, I'm not actually. No, I'm not calling Nova out. But like, no, just in general. But even Zora did not see the bed, the couch until she understood.
Right.
Even now, like in the middle of the night, if I want to kick her off, not that I would. She's been kicking herself off lately, but saying that's it. She just gets off. I tell her off, and that's it.
Right, or not being afraid to take those privileges away if they display behavior that says they don't deserve to have it.
Absolutely. But more importantly, it's like it's not one of those things where it's gone for a week. It's gone till you feel they're in a spot that they can have it back. If
Right.
that means 2 months or 2 years, tough love.
Right, like my dogs, for example, like we allow them in bed with us and they can coexist and things like that. We had an instance where my female was laying and I was asleep. My male dog jumped up onto the bed and she snapped at him. She hasn't been allowed in my bed since. I
Yep.
just don't tolerate it.
And
Well, I
that's-
think-
She
that's
can't
it.
handle it, then she doesn't get it.
Absolutely.
I think to add to that stuff too is if you give a dog a privilege, you can take it away. I have a lot of clients really, really struggle with giving a dog a privilege and then taking it away again. And it's I mean, sometimes you're going to give the privilege 4 times before the dog finally really earns it and it's solidified that is what is expected of them. So it's like, do not be afraid to take it away if needed, but give it back when they earn it if you want to give it back. I think some dogs can never go on couches or beds. I think we've seen
Trial
that
and
before. But I think to add one last thing with the puppy stuff, or 2 things, like very quick. When hey,
Very
it's
quickly.
for the
This is
people, man.
important.
It's for the people.
For the people.
It's important. It's important.
Know your breed before you get it.
Oh,
Do
yes.
not get a breed that is not good for
Oh,
your house.
yes.
Yeah, preach.
It's one of my signs.
Yeah, I think that's one thing where people think Mals.
Oh God.
Shepherds.
Mals.
Yeah,
Shepherds.
Shepherds
Dutch
right now I
Shepherds.
think are starting to die down, and Mals are starting to pick up a little bit, unfortunately, because 99.9% of the population should never touch one of those dogs, and this is not from a gatekeeping perspective, because I think a lot of trainers do gatekeep breeds and people just gatekeep breeds, but it's like if you cannot handle a lab, a golden, a doodle, whatever, do not get a Mal. Don't get a Shepherd. Don't get an Aussie. Don't get these really high-octane dogs that were supposed to be working pretty much from sun up till sundown. Like that's what they're bred for. And also get it from a good breeder, because if you get a Mal or a Shepherd or a high-octane, or any dog from a breeder that's not doing a good job at breeding and producing good quality dogs, it's just going to get worse the higher up you go as far as activity level of the dog. So it's like, be picky about the breeder, do your research, and even though they're cute, it doesn't mean it's for you.
Yeah.
So if you can't handle it, it's not a bad thing. It's not. You shouldn't be ashamed about it. But if you get that dog and you're not prepared, they're probably going to end up dead or back in the shelter, or a two-way shelter. So it's like you're giving the dog a really unfair life if you are being that self-centered where your ego is in front of the dog's needs. So I think that's really important. It's not. Some people don't like hearing that stuff, and I've had conversations with that with clients. But it's like you have to get brought back down to earth because you're putting this dog in a very unfair, dangerous situation, not only for the dog but other people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know like every time, especially the Malinois, like I just make the joke at this point where it's like, oh, Malinois is French for don't get one. Like just don't get a Malinois unless you know what you're doing. Because every time, like I've been here 4 years, every time I see a Mal, my first question is, why'd you get a Mal? I'm not trying to be, rude. I'm asking like, what is your goal with this dog? Mm-hmm. Because if you tell me, just, obedience, agility, I'm like, that's not
protection for the home.
Yeah. In a movie.
Yeah. It's like, get an Aussie. Don't do a Malinois. Malinois are bitey breeds, and every single one of those, their genetics will tell them, use your mouth.
Get a high energy lab.
Yep.
Those are fun and more stable.
Or an Aussie.
Yeah,
they're fun.
I said something in a recent video that I think we took out, but is an unpopular opinion. I said I would, and this is probably unpopular to you guys. But
It's probably directed at me. I think I know what you're gonna say.
No, it's not. It's not. It was I just said that I would much rather have my clients get a Malinois than a Border Collie.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Fair. Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Right.
People don't realize how superstitious Border Collies are. They are freaks. They are freaks of dogs.
Oh, Julie's got something to say. Give her the mic.
Not even that. I feel like.
Pull it away a little bit.
Oh.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Now it's really coming out.
Sorry. Shh.
No, you're
you're
good.
Italian.
You're good right there.
I feel like Border Collies are one of the most primitive breeds
Oh yeah.
out there right now. Like their genetics are so strong. We had a Border Collie for a board and train not too long ago, and he is one of the best Border Collies of all time. He's like very people friendly, loosey goosey, can go to the dog park and be chill, but he's very Border Collie. Every other aspect of him is very Border Collie.
Yeah,
Stocky, yes. And it's funny because we actually did a follow-up with him recently, and we were talking about, they found him on Craigslist or something like that, Facebook.
Sometimes you get lucky, man.
They are the luckiest
Yes,
people ever.
they are
This
very,
dog's-
very lucky.
This dog's a treat.
And almost every single time the guy picks up a toy, the dog goes into a down. Like the crouchy, low.
Let me kill this thing. And
Yes,
get it
let me at it.
Hurt it.
And so I kind of explained to them that that is likely genetic, so I wouldn't necessarily like try to correct that out of him or work it out of him. I mean, there's no issue with him really doing it at this point in time. But they like didn't know that was a very genetic thing.
We see a lot of that. All right, I think we'll wrap it up there. But this is the first of the No Bad Dogs podcast with the group and the staff. So make sure you guys stay around for more. Abby's gonna. Abby, you want me to do that again? I'll do it again. Whoever's listening to audio, you're about to get this closing out again because the camera died or something. But anyway, so thank you guys for watching, listening, all that stuff. This is the first of many, and we'll see you next time.